Hello and welcome back to our channel. My name is Femke from Fem to the Fiction on Instagram and Bookish Buddies over on Twitter. And today I am here with my TBR for the Tropeical Readathon. So the Tropeical Readathon was one of the best and most fun readathons I participated in last year, September. And I am beyond excited that a new round is coming in March. And if you weren't already aware, the Tropeical Readathon is a month-long readathon happening in March. And it is hosted by the lovely Jenny and Rob from Gen Reviews and The Book Rob, respectively. And the goal for this readathon is to read books with specific tropes. For this readathon, you will choose one of 5 teams for which you will be collecting points. And those 5 teams are Team Romance, Team Science Fiction Fantasy, Team Mystery Horror Thriller, Team Contemporary Literary and Historical Fiction, and Team Nonfiction and Poetry. I chose Team Science Fiction Fantasy because obvious reasons. Just like last year, I was Team Science Fiction Fantasy last year as well. So as I said, you will need to collect points for your team, and the team with the most points at the end wins. Essentially, what that means is that the winning team will enter a prize draw and you will be able to win a giveaway. So be sure to log your points on the website over at Gen Reviews. I will link all that down below. There are several ways for you to collect points for your team. The first is to complete one of the 13 common challenges. These challenges are the same across all teams, so it doesn't really matter what you read as long as the book you're reading satisfies the prompt. And for every common challenge you complete, you'll get 50 points. You are not allowed to double up, so that's just a heads up. The second way to collect points is to complete your team-specific challenges. Every team has 2 team-specific challenges worth 100 points. Obviously, these challenges will be different across teams, but essentially, you can just pick your team based on what team-specific prompts you want to do, because genre doesn't matter for the rest of the books. So for the common challenges, I forgot to say, the common challenges, you can either read a book with the specific trope, or there's an alternative prompt attached to it. So you have to read a book that, satisfies either the one or the other. Or both, I suppose, but that doesn't give you extra points or whatever. The team-specific challenges do not have alternative prompts. So for the team-specific challenges, you really do have to find a book with the given trope. And like I said, you're not allowed to double up. So if you want to complete all of the challenges, you will have to read at least 13 books, at least for the common challenges, and then 2 more for the team-specific challenges. Then there will also be a group book. This one is different across groups. Technically, there are 2 choices per group. One will be an older release and one will be a newer release, and reading one of these will award you 150 points. You are allowed to read group books from other teams, and this will also award you 150 points, but you are only allowed to read 1 book for the 150 points per team. So there's essentially 10 team books, and you are only allowed to read 5 for 150 points. And you are not allowed to use the group books to satisfy any other prompts. And then in addition to getting points for these prompts, you will also get 1 point per page you read. So if, for example, you used a 500-page book for a common prompt, then you will get 500 points because your book was 500 pages, and you will get 50 points because you completed a common prompt challenge. So all the information I just gave you, it's all available on the official website for the Tropeical Readathon, which is over at Gen Reviews, which I will link down below, as well as the Twitter account for the Tropeical Readathon and the sprint account on Twitter for the Tropeical Readathon, which is where reading sprints will be organized throughout the month at different times. So no matter where you are in the world, you will be able to do some reading sprints. Okay, so that has been a lot of information, and I know you're here for my TBR, so without further ado, let's get into the books. So I have a very ambitious TBR set for myself. I picked a book for every single prompt, plus the team book, which means that I have 16 books on my TBR. And instead of, being clever about it, I picked, all the books I picked are over 400 pages. There's not a single one under 400 pages, and I picked 4 books over 600 pages. So do with that what you will. I do suggest you be smarter about your choices than I was. because, well, obviously going to try my best. I really don't see myself finishing all 16 books, but we'll see, who knows. So I'm just going to start with the common challenges, and the first prompt, or trope, or challenge, was to read a book with either the trope of dead or absent parents, or to read a book written by multiple authors. And for this prompt I chose Incendiary by Zoraida Cordova. Incendiary is about a girl named Renata Convida who is kidnapped as a child by the crown because of her magical ability. Because Renata is something that is called Robari, which means that she has the ability to steal people's memories. And the information that she provided to the crown through her ability essentially resulted in the deaths of thousands of Renata's people. At the current point in time, Renata is working for the Whispers, which is just a group of spies rebelling against the crown, and they rescued Renata from the palace. Now they are very distrustful of Renata because of her ability and essentially what she did. And when the commander of the unit Renata is assigned to is kidnapped, Renata does everything it takes to rescue him, but when a rescue attempt goes horribly wrong, she essentially has to return to the palace and go undercover, and she has to convince those people that she is still loyal to them, all the while hiding her resentment and her need for vengeance. But returning to the palace stirs up long forgotten memories, and she discovers a secret that was hidden in her past that could change the fate of the entire kingdom, and it could also end the war that has cost her everything. So I am super interested in this book. It sounds super interesting to me, the fact that she can steal people's memories, but also the fact that it's set in Spain, which is not a setting I have seen often. But I do have to say that I haven't heard a lot about this book, so I'm honestly not sure how well received it is. But regardless, I am super excited to be reading this, since it's been on my TBR for, well, over a year. And the next prompt is to read a book in a war setting, or alternatively a book you could use as a weapon, which was explained as a book being over 500 pages. So the book I chose fits both of those prompts, and that is The Burning God by R.F. Kuang. This is the third and final book in the Poppy War trilogy, and I mean it's basically a brick, so you can definitely use this as a weapon. I have heard amazing things about this book. I've also heard that a lot of people were sobbing by the end of the book, so I'm pretty sure it's going to break me, but we'll see. So The Burning God picks up where the Dragon Republic left off, and again we follow Rin, this time as she returns to her hometown of Tikani in the southern provinces, where she faces difficult challenges but also unexpected opportunities. I won't say too much more because that would spoil, well, the Poppy War and the Dragon Republic, so I'm not going to go into more detail. But like I said, I am super excited and also dreading this book. The Poppy War has been one of my favorite books of the past couple of years, and the Dragon Republic as well. I have super high hopes for this book as well, but I am also aware that this is not one of the series that is probably going to have a happy ending. So, you know, equal parts terrified and excited. Then the third challenge is to read a book with the small town trope, or to read a book with a one-word title. And I chose the latter challenge, and that is Raybearer by Jordan Ifueko. And Raybearer is about a girl named Tarisai who has longed her entire life for the warmth of a family, but she has mostly been raised by an absent mother figure called the Lady. At one point, the Lady sends Tarisai to the capital to enter a competition for a position on the Crown Prince's Council. And if she succeeds, she will join the other council members through a bond called the Ray, which is a bond that goes deeper than blood. And for Tarisai, who has always longed for this warmth of a family, this is everything she could hope for. However, the Lady has different plans, and she imposes a magical twist on Tarisai that she is compelled to obey. She has to kill the Crown Prince after she gains his trust. And Tarisai does not want to stand by and become someone's pawn, but the question is whether she is strong enough to resist and choose a different path for herself. So I'm not sure, but this sounds like it's going to have enemies to lovers, which is one of my all-time favorite tropes. It also has the competition idea, which is also something that I love in books. And I am also really curious about the world this is set in, but also about the lady. It just sounds really intriguing. And I have heard very good things about this book, so I am definitely very excited for this. The next challenge was to either read a book with the coming of age trope or to read a book shaped who you are, and I chose the latter, and I chose to reread Daughter of Smoke and Bone by Laini Taylor. This is one of my all-time favorite books, and this is also one of the books that got me into reading fantasy in the first place, so I would say it definitely shaped who I am in the sense, you know, of a reader. And in addition to that, I am also hosting a read-along for this book throughout the month of March, so if you want to check that out, I will link it somewhere up here. Daughter of Smoke and Bone is about a girl named LaRue who is an art student in Prague. And in addition to being an art student, she is also an errand girl to a monstrous creature named Brimstone, who is the closest thing to a father she has. LaRue was raised half in the human world and half in a place called Elsewhere, but LaRue never understood Brimstone's dark work of buying and collecting teeth from collectors and murderers and poachers and that kind of stuff, but she also doesn't know how she came to be in Brimstone's keeping. And LaRue doesn't understand who she is and where she came from, and that is something that she desperately wants to know. And when a mysterious event occurs that causes the doors to Elsewhere to be closing, LaRue must choose between the safety of her human life as an art student and the dangers of a war-ravaged world that may hold the answers she has always sought. So I read Daughter of Smoke and Bone back in 2011 or 2012, essentially right when it came out, and I have loved it ever since. I basically read the tagline at the back, which is, "Once upon a time an angel and a devil fell in love. It did not end well." It always intrigued me, and I was immediately sold on the book, and I really love the way that Laini has created this world and everything in it. And like I said, this has definitely shaped who I am as a reader and also my reading taste, and I am super excited to be rereading this series once again. For the next challenge, you either have to read a book that is a dystopia or to read a book that someone else has chosen for you. And going through my entire bookcase, I came to the conclusion that I really don't have a lot of dystopian books left that I haven't read, but I managed to find one after I think about 2 hours of looking, and that is Lifelike by J. Kristoff. So Lifelike follows a girl named Eve who discovers the ruins of an android named Ezekiel in the scrap pile she calls home. And then Eve and Ezekiel, as well as Eve's best friend and her robotic sidekick, then have to travel across deserts of irradiated glass, battle cyborg assassins, and scour abandoned megacities to save the ones she loves and to discover the secrets of her past. This book definitely sounds like something I will enjoy. It has essentially the traveling trope, journey trope, whatever you want to call it. That is something that I tend to really enjoy. Lately I've also been really enjoying these futuristic things, so robots, androids, AI, that kind of stuff. So this really sounds like something I would enjoy, so I'm excited to read it. The sixth challenge is to either read a book with the blast from the past trope or to read a book that was published before 2000. This is kind of where it gets problematic for me, because I'm sure I will regret my choices, but I chose The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan. This thing is 846 pages. It is really big. You can't really see it, but it's like Bible pages. But yeah, I basically don't have books published before 2000 that are not gigantic, which is kind of a problem for this trope. But yeah, I already started this book. I'm about 150 pages in now. And in the event that I finish this before March, which is not likely, then I will pick The Great Hunt, which is the sequel, which was also published before 2000, which is slightly smaller at only 720 pages. So, but The Eye of the World is the longest book on my TBR, and it follows a boy named Rand and 4 of his companions as they have to flee into a world they have barely imagined, with new dangers awaiting in the shadows and in the light after their hometown of Two Rivers is attacked by Trollocs, which is a race of half human, half beasts. Honestly, the Goodreads synopsis doesn't explain a lot more than that. I'm about 150 pages into the book. I haven't gotten any further than that. That's literally all that happened, so I genuinely don't know what else to tell you about this book. I'm also not really sure whether I should describe myself as excited to read this book. I definitely want to read it, and I hope I'll enjoy it, but at this point in time it feels more like a chore to pick it up than actually being excited for it, but that's because it's so slow. Like, you know, watching a snail goes faster than reading this book. But I'm also kind of excited for this. Like, I hope it gets better. That's essentially the point. So I will definitely continue reading this. Then the next challenge was to either read a book with mixed media or to listen to an audiobook. And I really don't have any mixed media books. So for this challenge, I went with an audiobook. And since I already have this 850-page book on my list, I decided why not add a 770-page book to it, because I chose A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J. Maas, which is a chunky boy. Because apparently I cannot choose my books sensibly for readathons. But we'll see, Sure, it'll be fine. And A Court of Silver Flames follows Nesta, Farah's sister, as she comes to terms with what happened to her in the previous books. And additionally, I believe that the plot follows her and Cassian as they have to stop some evil plot of the mortal queens of the mainland from happening. I'm really not sure, but I have to admit I don't really have a synopsis ready for you guys for this one because I don't want to know. I have a pretty complicated relationship with Sarah J. Maas books, especially this series. And I really want to go into this without knowing anything so I can get super high expectations, if that makes sense. But regardless, I am curious about this book and I really hope that I will enjoy this again. The 8th challenge was to either read a book with artificial intelligence or to read an ebook, and I kind of used this book as a wild card because reading an ebook generally means you can read anything here. Lauren from Me, My Books and Food decided we wanted to buddy read this book, so we chose The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue for this prompt. This was my ultimate, most anticipated release of last year, and I'm just terrified to read it because I'm scared that I'll dislike it. I have never not liked a book by Victoria Schwab before, but you know, I mean, it would be super obvious if this would be the one that I hated, which I really hope not because I have six different editions of this book. And The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue is about a girl named Addie LaRue who makes a bargain with the devil to live forever. However, the devil curses her to be forgotten by everyone she meets. The book then follows Addie for the next 300 years across continents and time, as she learns how far she's willing to go to leave her mark on the world. But everything changes when, in a hidden bookstore, a young man remembers her name. So obviously, it being my most anticipated release of the year, this sounds absolutely like something that I'll enjoy. And I have heard amazing things about this, but unfortunately Esmay didn't really love it, and our reading tastes tend to be very similar. That also makes me a bit more scared. But regardless, I still hope I will absolutely love this book. The next challenge was to either read a book with the boarding school trope or to do a buddy read, and I went with the latter. So Lauren and I are going to do another buddy read this month, and that will be The Bone Season by Samantha Shannon. The Bone Season is one of the only other dystopian books on my shelves that I haven't read yet, and this is set in 2059. And it follows Paige Mahoney, who works in the criminal underworld of Sion, London. She is employed by Jackson Hall, and her job is to scout for information by breaking into people's minds, because Paige is a dreamwalker, a clairvoyant, and she commits treason simply by breathing. And one day, Paige is attacked, drugged, kidnapped, and then transported to Oxford, which is a city kept secret for 2 centuries that is controlled by a powerful otherworldly race. Then Paige is assigned to Warden, who is to be her master and her trainer, and he is a Rephite, I think it's pronounced Rephite, with some mysterious motives. He is also her natural enemy, but if Paige wants to regain her freedom, she must allow herself to be nurtured in this prison that wants her dead. Now, I honestly have no idea why I haven't read this yet, because this definitely sounds like something that I want to read now. Maybe it was something that I wasn't really in a mood for, but I definitely feel like this is something that I'm in the mood for now and that my mind is ready for. Yeah, I can hardly wait to pick this up. Then the next challenge is for the trope that is probably my favorite, and that is enemies to lovers. Alternatively, the challenge was to read a book you previously DNF'd. However, I hardly ever DNF books, so this is a really difficult challenge for me. Yeah, so I chose a book that has the enemies to lovers trope, and that is A Song of Wraiths and Ruin by Roseanne A. Brown. So this book follows Malik and Karina and Malik. And for Malik, the Solstasia Festival is a chance to escape his war-stricken home and build a new life for himself in the wealthy desert city of Ziran. But when a vengeful spirit abducts Malik's younger sister Nadia as payment into the city, Malik strikes a fatal deal because he is to assassinate the crown princess in order to earn Nadia's freedom. Karina, who is the crown princess of Ziran, has some deadly aspirations of her own. Her mother was assassinated and her court threatens mutiny, and above all that, the Solstasia Festival looms like a knife over her neck. Grief-stricken, Karina resorts to some ancient magic and decides to resurrect her mother, which requires the beating heart of a king. And she knows exactly how to obtain one, by offering her hand in marriage in the upcoming Solstasia Festival games. And when Malik rigs his way into the competition, they are set on a course to destroy each other. But then attraction flares between them, and then ancient evils stir, and the question is, will they be able to see their tasks through to the end? So this book really sounds like everything I enjoy in books. Desert towns, enemies to lovers, competitions, death magic. In short, I have really high hopes for this book, and I haven't really heard any bad things about it, so bring it on. The 11th challenge was to either read a book with multiple points of view or to read a book with multiple POC characters. And I chose the first option, but I do believe this book also has the latter. And the book I chose is The Toll by Neil Schuster. So The Toll is the final book in the Arc of a Scythe trilogy, and it is set 3 years after the events of Thunderhead, which is the second book. But I won't go into any more detail than that because that would be major spoilers for the first two books. I am a bit apprehensive going into this book because the first and the second book disappointed me. But nonetheless, I am curious about how the series is going to be wrapped up, which is also the main reason I have decided to add it to this TBR. The 12th common challenge was to either read a book with the new kid in town trope or to read a book from a genre you don't usually read, and I went with the latter. And I chose A Mask of Shadows by Oscar de Muriel. This is a murder mystery. I do occasionally read them, but I don't usually read them, so decided it fits the prompt. And in this book, two actors are preparing to stage Macbeth in Edinburgh, but before the actors hit the boards, the playhouse is hit with horror. A piercing, terrible scream of a banshee and a gory message written in blood in the streets. Then legendary detective Nine Nails McGray and Inspector Ian Frey are to investigate the scene. But while Detective McGray dives into ancient tomes on the supernatural, Inspector Frey believes it is nothing more than an elaborate hoax or a publicity stunt. But as the gory messages keep coming, and one thing is for certain, because whether by human hand or not, death is coming. So I'm never quite sure whether these books should be labeled as paranormal or not, but they're definitely interesting, and I really liked the first two books, so I hope I will like this one as well. Then the final common challenge was to either read a retelling or to read a book with a movie or TV adaptation, and I chose the former, and I picked Blood Heir by Amelie Van Zau. In Blood Heir, we read about the Cerulean Empire, where Ephanites are reviled because their varied gifts are considered unnatural and even dangerous. And the Crown Princess Anastasia Mikhailov is an Ephanite, and one of the most terrifying ones at that, because Anna is able to control blood. But her ability has been long kept secret. But when her father is assassinated, Anna is the only suspect. And in order to save her own life, she has to find her father's murderer. But the Cerelia beyond the palace walls is one where corruption rules and a greater conspiracy is at play. One that threatens the very balance of Anna's world. And only one person is corrupt enough to help her. He is a cunning criminal mastermind called Ransom Quicktongue, and Ransom is a cunning crime lord with some sinister plans, even though he might have found his match in Anna. Because in this story, the princess might be the most dangerous player of them all. I have been excited about this book ever since it was first announced, and I cannot wait until I get to dive into this world. So those were all of the common challenges. Now for the 2 team-specific challenges. The first one for Team Sci-Fi Fantasy is to read a book with a secret world. And I have to admit I struggled quite a bit to find one that fit this book, but in the end I settled on Legendborn by Tracy Deonn. In this book, Bree Matthews doesn't want anything to do with her family memories or childhood home after her mother dies in an accident. A residential program for bright high schoolers offers the perfect escape. Bree witnesses a magical attack on her very first night at campus. There are flying demons who siphon human energy, and a secret society of the people who are so-called Legendborn students that hunt the creatures down. There is also a mysterious teenage mage who calls himself Merlin, and he attempts to wipe and fails to wipe Bree's memory. And the mage's failure unlocks some of Bree's memories and her own unique magic. It unlocks a hidden memory because the night her mother died, another Merlin was at the hospital. And now that Bree knows there's something going on and that there's more to her mother's death than what's on the police report, she'll do whatever it takes to find out the truth. Even if that means infiltrating the Legendborn as one of their initiates. So I have to say I was very excited for this book, but Esmay recently read it and she was less than impressed by it. Just also dampened my excitement somewhat, but nonetheless I will definitely read it and form my own opinions, and I still have high hopes for this. And then the second of the 2 team-specific challenges was to read a book with the first contact trope. Now, I really don't have a lot of books with aliens at all, so this was a pretty difficult challenge for me to find a book for, but in the end I chose The Power of Six, which is the second book in the Lorien Legacies by Pittacus Lore. And in this series we follow several aliens as they hide on Earth from their enemies, and they are in hiding until their abilities have developed enough to be able to take back their home planet. And until that time, they have to remain hidden. So I first read the book in this series a little while ago, and I enjoyed it. I wasn't super impressed by it. I mean, it was fine, but it wasn't overly special. But regardless, I am curious as to the next book in the series. And this seems like as good a time as any to read it. And then the final book on my TBR is the group book for Team Sci-Fi Fantasy. And I picked the older option, and that was Rosewater by Tate Thompson. So Rosewater is a town on the edge, a community formed around the edges of a mysterious alien biodome. Its residents comprise the hopeful, the hungry, and the helpless. People eager for a glimpse inside the biodome that is rumored to have healing powers. Caro is a government agent with a criminal past, and he has seen inside the biodome, and he doesn't care to do it again. But when something begins killing off others like himself, Caro must defy his masters to search for an answer, facing his dark history and coming to a realization about a dark future. I have to admit, I had never heard of this book before, but I am definitely intrigued about this book. It sounds very mysterious, and I honestly can't wait to read it, so yeah. Okay, so those were all of the books on my TBR for the Tropeical Readathon. This has been a long video, and I am sorry for that. But yeah, like I said, there's quite a lot of them. I hope I'll be able to read them all. I don't think I will, but I will try my best. If any of these books are on your TBR as well, or if you will be participating, let me know down below in the comments. If you liked this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up and hitting the subscribe button. I want to thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!